as well as the substitute. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the floor substitute.
Delegate Simon, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, we gave you a little bit of a preview of this yesterday, but this is an opportunity for everyone in this body to vote on a truly independent, nonpartisan, citizen-led redistricting commission.
Mr. President.
Okay, and that's what many of us have said we wanted all along. Now, I've heard some of the critiques of the floor substitute overnight. We did give everybody a chance to sleep on it, a chance to read it, a chance to look at the key provisions. And I'm going to pull up here, maybe my able delegate from Farmer Keem can help me out here, man of many talents. So just to understand what some of the differences are, the substitute enshrines explicit protections for racial and language minorities in the Virginia Constitution, right? We don't just say 4 lines that says we'll do our best to comply with the VRA where practicable, right? We set up criteria for the commission to follow that talks about making sure that we have a commission, first of all, a commission that represents broadly Virginia, all aspects of Virginians, whether it's racial, geographic, all sorts of diversity, but also says that it's going to be a key tenet of whatever maps they draw that language and racial minorities are protected. It removes legislators from being directly involved in the map-making process, right? People say they want an independent, they say we want voters picking their politicians, not the other way around, right? The substitute, that's what you get. With the underlying resolution, you get legislators. You get half the members being legislators from the Senate and from the House, and there's no guarantee of other than political party, that you'll have any diversity of thought or of background or of geography in those picks. It enshrines transparency and public input in the Constitution. The commission is required to hold public hearings throughout the state in the substitute, right? We looked at the timing of the underlying piece of legislation, and they've got 45 days to complete a map when they get data in February when we're here in session, and it's 8 legislators here in session. They're supposed to get the public input. It provides criteria in the Constitution explicitly protecting racial and language minorities and preserving communities of interest. Now, you've got the same language in enabling legislation. We've got that criteria in House Bill 768 that Delegate Van Valkenburg put in. We have it as a standalone in case nothing passes in the bill that you all voted against earlier this morning, this actual morning, after I reminded you exactly, Madam Speaker, of what was in that bill. All these things that this says no on, say no on. So by the way, if you voted no to those criteria before, safe to say you're probably going to be in this column. But if you voted yes to those criteria before, I hope that you'll be in this column. Madam Speaker, it prevents political gerrymandering in the Virginia Constitution, right? That's what everybody tells us when they say support redistricting reform. They want to end political gerrymandering, right? The assumption in the underlying bill is that, well, if you have an equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and if they can veto each other, they won't politically gerrymander because it'd be mutually assured destruction. So kind of hope that the dynamics work out that way, but it doesn't say you can't do it. It doesn't say you can't do it in the Constitution. It says that in the criteria bill, which you all voted against, and which we all voted for. Madam Speaker, it requires a supermajority for the commission to adopt the map, because I've heard this argument before. Well, we don't know who's going to pick the commissioners. It's going to be in a process that the Secretary of the Commonwealth will oversee. By the way, I want to be very clear about something. The Secretary of the Commonwealth doesn't pick the members. She oversees the process that will be adopted in, get this, enabling legislation, right? Because we do need to get enabling legislation to set up that process. But the process, although there's enabling legislation, the constitutional amendment requires it to be a transparent process, requires there to be applications, requires there to provide an opportunity for everyone across the Commonwealth to participate. And it requires political diversity. And so I've got some people hung up on what does that mean. In the current system, you've got Republicans and Democrats. I knock on a lot of doors when I run for office, believe it or not. And I run to a lot of people that tell me they're independents. I run to a lot of people that tell me they vote this way sometimes, they vote this way sometimes. So the substitute provides an opportunity for people that are independent, that aren't hyper-partisans, to participate in the process. And it also requires political diversity across the Commonwealth, because I'll tell you, among Democrats, we're quite a spectrum. You've got somebody like Senator Sasslaw, and you've got somebody like Delegate Carter. We've got diversity, and those different points of view can be represented in a commission that follows these criteria. When you're just picking 4 from each body, and they're picked by the leadership of the body, you know you're going to get just the most partisan folks involved in that. And so if you want a nonpartisan commission, this doesn't give you the way to do it. This doesn't give you the way to do it. Almost done here. The commission has authority to adopt a map that doesn't require General Assembly approval. That's what the whole point of this is supposed to be, right? To get the General Assembly out of the process. The reason ultimately we're going to need a constitutional amendment to do this is because the Constitution says the General Assembly has to make these districts. We're trying to make it so that doesn't happen anymore, because people tell us, people that are proponents of redistricting reform say they want a process that doesn't involve politicians picking their voters. Yes, we both go ahead and send the adopted map to the General Assembly for approval, but we don't draw the map. And then we have this question about what happens if we fail to adopt the map. We have actually, and you've heard from Delegate Levine, you've heard from Delegate Price, you've heard from Delegate Watts, the current amendment that's unfixed, as it were, sort of says that any 2 members of the commission, the 2 legislative members, can just conspire together to send it straight to the Supreme Court. Ours says if you can't get 9 out of 11 members to agree, so talk about a supermajority, we get 9 out of 11, a consensus map, then we'll give the General Assembly the 2 maps that got the next highest number of votes to pick from. Keeping in mind, this is not going to be a monolithic commission. This has got 11 members, and they must, constitutionally must, not just enabling legislation, which can be repealed, they must represent a broad swath of Virginia. Thank you guys very much for the help with the poster. Madam Speaker, members of the House, I know we've been told we have no choice but to adopt this amendment. And I'm here to tell you today that there is another choice. There is another vote that you can take today. You can take a vote that tells your voters at home, that tells the people you campaign to, that tells the people that are sending you emails and postcards and making phone calls to your office that you care about and you want and you desire for this Commonwealth a true anti-gerrymandering amendment. You want redistricting reform that really does take politicians out of the mix. You are for a constitutional amendment that sets up a process where every Virginian has a voice and a seat at that table. And that's what we're asking for, Madam Speaker. We're asking for you members to understand, to hear the voices that say they've been marginalized and they say they need a place. Now, I've heard that your commission, Delegate Simon, your commission with 11 members, there's no guarantee that you'll have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. To that I say, under the underlying amendment, communities of color, communities of interest, minority, disadvantaged communities, they have no guarantee of being enshrined on that either. There's nothing that protects. Now we say, well, we'll have enabling legislation that will fix that piece of it. So what I've heard is we can't trust the enabling legislation under my floor substitute to protect political minorities, but actual minorities need to rely on the enabling legislation that we will draft to know that they will have a seat at the table. That's unacceptable, Madam Speaker. This amendment is deeply flawed. I know that most of us know that it's not perfect. In fact, no one has told me it's perfect. Even the most ardent advocates have said it's not perfect, but nothing's perfect. It's going into our Constitution. And this has been a long and difficult process, and it's going to be just as long and more difficult to try and change it. We have an opportunity to vote for something better, Madam Speaker. I implore you all, please vote yes on this floor substitute. Let's restart this process. Let's send a signal to the governor that we want a truly independent, nonpartisan, citizen-led commission that will give us fair maps that will represent the needs of all Virginians. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Delegate from Clark County, Delegate Goditis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to point out a little document called the U.S. Constitution, wherein there was not enshrined specificities about race and gender, and 230 years later, it's still giving us headaches. Madam Speaker, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. The delegate from Albemarle, Delegate Bell.
Madam Speaker, I would ask to speak to the motion